Pull yourself up a chair and join us at the Energy Roundtable.
Welcome to another edition of the Energy Roundtable, and let's dive in. Lisa Katz, my partner in crime on these, welcome.
Thank you, Matt. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. You?
I'm good. Thank you.
You're dressed for the cooler weather, it looks like.
Well, actually, it's because we had our carpets cleaned yesterday, so all of our windows on the upper floor are opened, and I'm freezing actually because it's getting pretty cold inside. So, yeah.
Well, let's heat things up with our first article. We'll jump right in. Last time we were together, we were talking about we spoke specifically about the federal policies for energy here in Canada. And we'll pivot back to our normal routine of trading articles. And so I'll start with an article out of an engineering school that I never would even think about going to, aside from as a tourist, MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology. They have a news website, news.mit.edu, and it's all the news about their campus and I guess their students and their alumni and things of that nature. And so this announcement, which is 2 days old, talks about a major breakthrough they had in kind of moving towards fusion energy. So right now, when we talk about nuclear energy, we talk about nuclear fission, which is basically taking an atom and splitting it apart. And the release of that nuclear energy that binds the center of that atom together, that release, then it has a cascading ripple of chain reaction, and that releases massive amounts of energy. But fusion, different than fission, nuclear fusion is the exact opposite. So it's taking two small atoms, fusing them together, and making a larger atom. And you know, all of us experience that every day, believe it or not, through the sun. So the sun is basically nuclear fusion. It's taking molecules of hydrogen. There we are. How quickly are we into this? But turning hydrogen into helium at temperatures of millions of degrees. And so the key, though, because it happens at such high temperatures, is how can you ever contain that? You know, the article talks about how it's literally 100 million degrees you need to be able to capture and contain that. So obviously, you know, your Tim Hortons coffee cup is not going to hold that kind of reaction, nor is any really high octane metal. And so the breakthrough is they're working on this very high powered, magnetic field, and through high temperature superconductors, they've been able to really make this magnetic field. And so the thinking is that they will hold this fusion reaction in this magnetic field. And that way it's kind of suspended in space like you see on the movies, and it's not touching anything. And then they can hold it in space, and they can do the nuclear fusion reaction. So they talk about having this project, the actual, now that they've had this massive breakthrough, which has been the barrier, by 2025, they want to have a nuclear fusion kind of demonstration project live. So, you know, go check it out, news.mit.edu. It's about fusion, but very, very interesting. Not something that's, you know, gonna be in our world in the next 10 years, but very exciting news out of MIT this week.
So I'm interested to find out, Matt, like when we talk about the TRL level or the technology readiness level, like where roughly is this technology at? I've heard a little bit about it. Actually, you know who really is quite fond of this? Bill, our engineering manager. Yes. He was talking to me about it a little bit, and Ronnie, our co-op student, is also like, he's really passionate about it, and I knew nothing about it. So Bill kind of briefed me a little bit, and you've actually just rebriefed me, so this is good. But where does it sit on the scale? Like when we're talking about that 1 to 9, is it kind of in a range of like a 4 or 5 at this point?
No. We're still trying to get this. I mean, we kind of know the science. We know the science. We know that that's what happens in the sun. But I think I don't know the scale very well, but we're probably in the 1 to 3 range. I mean,
okay.
But the upside and the moonshot, and that's relevant for my later article. But the moonshot here is this is a game changer in terms of energy. Like, you know, I don't know the numbers, but it's like 10, 20x of what nuclear fission is. Like it's massive. If you can get that the fusion of those two atoms into a larger atom, the energy release is massive. And so that's why, yes, it's early on the stage, but if we can get there, we're not talking about storage anymore. We're not talking about, it's over at that point. So
Wow.
maybe it's the Holy Grail. We'll never get there, but this is an exciting step forward.
Cool. That's awesome. So I have 2 articles that I'm sort of lumping into one. I have a third to,
Okay.
so not limiting to these 2. But just because they were so related, and there was a couple of kind of tips in both of them that I thought I would share. So it's a little bit different than what I've covered in the past. The first one is from the Toronto Star. It's called "Don't Let Sustainability Eat into Your Budget." And the second one is from a blog post, and it's called the blog is called "To Taste a Culinary Nutrition Experience." And essentially, what both of these, the reason that they're linked is they're talking about the impact of food on the environment. And I kind of wanted to cover it because it's a little bit different than what we've normally been doing. And, it kind of, it allows us individually to think about how to reduce our carbon footprint, in our own households. So because obviously, yes, industrial GHGs and, other GHG sources are very important. And, certainly a big has a lot to do with climate. But if we can do things on our own, that would be great, too. So basically, what the articles are sort of talking about is there's a couple of points, and it's all about kind of creating different habits. So one is do your research, because most people are so far removed from, food and the way that our food is produced, and that makes it really difficult for us to make informed decisions. So there's a lot of buzzwords that are going around. We hear local, natural, organic, and that's sort of become a catch-all phrase. So really do your research to understand where your food is coming from, and that will start to, create those informed decisions. Another tip was to reprioritize your budget. So many people, I'm not one of them, but many people, they don't think about what they want to necessarily eat for the week, right? They kind of go to the grocery store every day and maybe pick some stuff up, but they're not necessarily thinking about what they want to eat in advance. And sometimes that can lead to to poor choices. It can lead to purchasing too much because maybe you go in and your eyes are bigger than your stomach and you can't finish what you purchased. Or, maybe you're eating out more often, and that's not necessarily very sustainable long term as well. So it's all this point is about decreasing waste and decreasing meat consumption and cooking at home. And, doing research on things such as maybe looking at food replacements. So if you're thinking about cow's milk, there's many milk replacements out there like oat beverage or soy beverage. So looking at individual food items and thinking about how you can be more sustainable, changing one of them, and then, adapting that or moving on to the next product. Another point was to look for local food programs. I kind of like this one because I was affected by this only 2 weeks ago. But the benefits are decreasing transportation costs and avoiding waste from food that spoils. So that's kind of the direct personal link, because I have 4 pairs sitting in my fruit basket that I purchased 2 weeks ago, and they have not ripened.
Oh.
At all. I've tried the brown bag trick. I've tried everything. And
what
so
about bananas? Put them on bananas?
I did put them on bananas, actually. Yeah.
Didn't work? Wow.
No, it didn't work. So where are they going to go? They're going to go in my compost bin, my green bin, right? And so, but again, it's waste, doesn't lead to sustainable practices. So obviously, if you're buying local, it means you have to also think about, the time of year and the foods that, typically are available at that time of year. And then the second article is, again, listing some other tips. One of them that has already been kind of mentioned, but eat more plants and less meat. So I looked up some facts here just because I, wanted to back some things up here.
This is going to cut deep. I can feel it. But keep going.
No, it's not. It's not. But anyways, I'll just explain it a little bit. So interestingly enough, cattle are the #1 agricultural source of GHGs worldwide. Many people do know that. I did not know that one cow will belch about 220 pounds of methane per year. And methane, of course, is shorter lived than CO2. But methane has 28 times more potent, or is 28 more times more potent in warming the atmosphere. And the big concern here is really what, the population and our population size as we grow to 2050, which is expected to reach nearly 10 billion. So I will say that I am not a vegan and I'm not a vegetarian. I cannot go there because I do like meat and I like eggs. But we at home have started to reduce the consumption of red meat for 2 reasons. The first one is it's, supposedly not very good to be eating, copious amounts of red meat, from a dietary perspective, but also because of the climate piece. So that's kind of an interesting thing. Reduce consumption of highly processed foods. Be picky with seafood, which a lot of us might not be thinking about. But fish farming, for example, can be one way to reduce overfishing of the oceans. Buy local, buy in season, buy in bulk, make your own food when you can, reduce food waste, reduce, reuse, repurpose. And I love the last one, compost. So for some of us, it might be like I had in my backyard when I was growing up as a kid, where you bring out the compost to the actual compost bin. Or alternatively, use your green bins, which of course I love because so many more municipalities are creating, of course, RNG from that compost or that green bin material, which of course benefits our own business at CEM. So keep that up, guys. So that's that article.
Well, it's great, and it's important. I'm glad you brought it up because it broadens our thinking beyond just energy consumption at point of use, and it takes a more holistic and the whole meat thing is such a, like, as you know, I'm not a big animal person. I believe animals belong on my plate. But to that point, I love to eat red meat, and I grew up working in a butcher shop. And so, I do the meal planning, and I'm thinking through, okay, I start with the meat, and I'm like, okay, what's this meal's meat going to be in this one and this one? And every meal has meat, and it's like, that maybe isn't needed, right? And that the GHG profile is now apparently there are some algae kind of supplements that they're working through that will greatly reduce the belching of cows. So that may help us as well. But that's a great observation that you make, and a great challenge to all of us to be thinking about that. So did you, what was the Toronto Star, you said was the article?
Yeah, it was from Toronto Star, and the blog post was, let me just get the name again. It's to taste a culinary nutrition experience.
Okay, cool. Well, I'm going to go from local kind of, we can do it ourselves to something that's much bigger than all of us, and talk. It's not really an article, but I want to highlight something that the Department of Energy is doing in the U.S. And so, as part of Biden's, climate policy and things like that, they're doing what they're calling a hydrogen shot. And so, I mentioned the moon shot earlier. Of course, Kennedy in the early 60s says we're losing to the Russians. We're going to put a man on the moon by 69. Doesn't live to see it, but they actually do it. And then, so this moonshot becomes kind of this rallying cry for Americans in a bunch of different ways. And so they have done a solar shot, where as an industry, they said Department of Energy wants to be at the center of this, but they wanted to get the price of an installed kilowatt or megawatt down to like $1 a watt or something, really, really low. And they got there, and they did, supply chain, it was innovation, it was a whole bunch of different things that we got there. And so now they've launched this hydrogen shot. And so they're using this kind of 111 catchphrase, which basically is by the end of the decade. So it's basically, they want to get hydrogen to $1 for 1 kilogram in 1 decade. So 111. So that's the focus, is this whole initiative. So I was part of this event last Tuesday, I think it was. And so the first speaker was the current Secretary of Energy. The next speaker was John Kerry, the special climate envoy. Then there was this software guy, Bill Gates, spoke. And then the executive director of the Hydrogen Council, Daryl Wilson. So they're like really banner people in this industry and in broader industries. And then, really got into the nuts and bolts. And so now we talk about this hydrogen rainbow, because it's not just green and blue and gray. There's pink, there's yellow, there's all these different, it's just, it's fascinating. And so if we can get to, by 2030, 2031, $1 per 1 kilogram, and then in 1 decade, that's exciting. So encourage it. So there's a combination of funding and trying to find hydrogen clusters and all this stuff that's coming out of this in the US, but some pretty aggressive targets, and they're going to move the needle. So we want to stay close to that. It's the hydrogen shot by the DOE. So cool
very
stuff.
Interesting. Yeah, it's interesting because Well, I was preparing for Energy News, which of course Mark and I do every Friday, and then it comes out on Monday. So for those of you that want to tune into that, it will come out on Monday morning, typically by about 11 o'clock or so. But Caterpillar, of course, has just recently announced that they are running have made-to-order engines, reciprocating engines that can run on 100% hydrogen. We know that 2G and others, of course, have the ability to do that as well. Solar turbines have been able to do it. I don't think necessarily up to 100%, but a certain blend anyways for many, many years. So, and part of the reason that Caterpillar was so eager to do this with their reciprocating engines, they mentioned in their article, their news release, is because they really do think that hydrogen is a path forward, moving forward to reduce, climate emissions and so on. So, yeah, interesting. If we can reduce the cost of the fuel, there's just so many more possibilities.
It's a big deal. Yep. You got one more?
I have one more. So the next one is also from the Toronto Star. This one, I guess, is closer to home. New show generates life into Niagara Power Station. Mm-hmm. So a little bit different than what I would also normally cover, but wanted to just highlight the Niagara region. And for those of you that might be traveling this fall to the area, you might want to check out this new immersive sound and light show that's bringing the Niagara Parks Power Station alive at night to the public. So with the use of projection mapping, laser lights, reactive technology, and a project-specific musical score, the project, which is called Currents Niagara's Power Transformed, tells the local story of hydroelectric power from its beginning to today. It's a 30-minute show, and it takes place inside the 116-year-old power station, which is along Niagara Parkway in Niagara Falls. And basically, it's quite interesting. It was built in 1905 as Niagara Power Generating Station. The facility is the only fully intact, decommissioned hydroelectric plant of its period left in the world. So that's quite interesting. And there will be a phase 2 of the project that will be added to the attraction. It's expected to open next summer. And it will provide visitors access to the underground infrastructure of the power station with a glass elevator taking visitors 55 meters below the generator floor to explore the 610-meter-long tail race tunnel that empties at the base of the falls. So for those of you that, have young children, want to kind of, show and explain to them what hydropower is and how that works. And I mean, I haven't been there myself, but certainly intend to visit with my family. I think it sounds great. And again, it's relevant to our industry, so I thought I would bring it up.
No, that's great, and I'm just you had me at glass elevator, like you got hydroelectric power and Willy Wonka all in the same spot, right? So it's that, and that site apparently used to generate at 25 hertz, not our conventional 60 hertz. And there was one site in Niagara, and there was one site in Hamilton. So there was a transmission line that went all the way from Niagara to Hamilton, and it was 25 hertz for the longest time. Now they've replaced that infrastructure, but the whole. I mean, you talk about a history of power in Ontario. It all starts there, and that's great. So there is a phase now. You can go see it, and then they're expanding it next year.
That's correct. Yep.
Cool. Very good. Well, thank you, Lisa. You're broadening our view here, and this is always helpful. Let's continue to broaden the view and the table, and we will invite our content creator extraordinaire, Mr. Mark Charbonneau. Welcome, Mark.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. How are you?
There, Mark.
Good. You ready for our face-off this week?
Yes. As you know, if you're new to watching this segment, face-off is we pick a topic. Regardless to your personal views, you are forced to argue pro or for or against said topic. Today's topic is unions. We just celebrated Labor Day, September 6th, so I thought it was fitting for that. So pros and cons of unions. And Matt, I think, is your call for the coin toss this week. So you can call
a couple points of clarity. One, for the listeners, they should know Lisa always prepares and I never prepare. So that's why Lisa usually wins. Second of all, point of clarity to the moderator, union, we're talking labor union, not a union of two spouses, as an example.
Correct. Yes.
Let's call that. So I'll call tails.
Okay, I was going to say that one could be a whole separate face-off.
Yeah.
What did you say you called? Sorry?
I called tails.
It is tails. I don't know if you can see that. Yeah, there we go.
I would like to be against labor unions.
Okay. And would you like to start?
No, I would like Lisa to start.
Okay.
Oh, really? Oh,
Yeah.
Okay. I know what he's trying to do now. He's going to use some of my points and just spin them. Okay, so I have my pros.
Muhammad Ali called that rope-a-dope.
That's right.
That's true.
I have my pros list right here, so I'll go through it. So the first one is probably provide protection to workers. So for example, in many cases, an employer who wishes to fire an employee needs to actually go through a specific arbitration and grievance procedure. So it's a little bit harder to actually get rid of employees that, an employer might not really want to keep anymore. Unions are economic trendsetters. So before unions, weekends and provisions for workers didn't really exist. Other examples that I researched that include minimum wage and OSHA guidelines and overtime rules. So again, great to set some of those trends and look out for the worker at the same time. Unions often promote higher wages and better benefits. Again, always looking out for the employee, the worker. And the last point that I have is unions are able to amplify and advance political causes the working class, generally speaking, supports. Those are my pros.
Just before we start, can you guys tell me what year it is? So unions had a place, in my view. Unions had a place in like the 1900s when children and people who should not have been in the working or the working environments were unsafe, or it was just criminal. And so yes, this collective union but unfortunately that has morphed into a world where if you are in a union, and this is very biased and probably in some ways not right, but the point is to be a little bit kind of over the top on this. And so like we're at a point now where you are untouchable for all intents and purposes if you are in a union. And so regardless of your performance, regardless of how effective you are at your job, to Lisa's point, there is this process, and that's great, but that unfortunately puts the benefit towards the union, not the employer, and the employer is stuck with potentially employees who aren't up to snuff. The unions, I think, have this they're not cheap. They have a cost to run a union, and so they have to have always higher wages, and at some point those higher wages provide this framework where that business is no longer sustainable. And so that business is going to go elsewhere, and it's going to go to less skilled areas where they can pay lower wages. And unfortunately, then, that game of chicken, the union lost that game of chicken. And it, for an employer, it really limits, what they can do and their flexibility and the ability to work with a very talented and integral part of their business. If that becomes a hostile relationship, they can't work together. And we, as employers, we need our team members to be working on the same page. So I think they had a place, but I think now where we have the Employment Standards Act in Ontario that's very, very strong, and we have OSHA, as Lisa mentioned, we have all that stuff taken care of. Now we got to figure out how to be innovative, how to be efficient, and how to hire the best people, how to keep the best people, how to motivate the best people, and I think unions fly in the face of that.
See, I'm personally on the fence for this because I think unions have their place in certain industries. But like I don't know. Do you have a rebuttal, Lisa, or like what do you think?
Well, if I start to speak, I might be actually giving Matt the win.
For the sake of this, I would say Matt has the more compelling argument. Although I do disagree with certain things, and I do think that they do have this, like I said, they serve their purpose, and there is value in having a union for certain industries for sure.
Just for fun, because this does put, like I said, this is going to give Matt the win anyways. But and you've given him the win anyway, so it's
keep going.
But just a couple of facts. So I didn't know this, but I was researching it this morning. So typical deductions when you're a union member are in the range of about 1.5 to 2.5%. So what's really interesting about that is if you're going from a non-unionized environment to a unionized environment, that additional pay that you might be getting is actually reduced because you have to pay those union fees, right? The other thing that I did not know, which was kind of interesting for me anyways personally, was if you want to apply for a unionized position. Now, not all of these are the same because there's open and closed unions, and I've never worked in a unionized environment. So I, again, had to do a little bit of research. But in many cases, the candidate actually has to be a union member. Now, some make exceptions to the rule, and they'll still allow the candidate to interview. But of course, if the candidate goes beyond the next step, they have to become a union member. So anyways, I just thought that was interesting. Like I said, that's why I kept my mouth shut until you made your decision, Mark.
Yeah.
It was gonna lean it anyways over to Mark, to Matt's end.
Well, I know my wife pays a small fortune for her union dues, and it's you know, it hurts when you see that number. You're like, oh, I mean, it comes with a benefit, but you know, that's not one of them.
Good. Well, thank you both. Next time we'll discuss the merits of marital unions. No, I'm just kidding. Thank you, Mark, for always having a good topic that can provoke discussion. Lisa, thank you for your articles, and thank you to our listeners. And as always, if this has brought value to you, please, share it with others. We're just trying to bring value and bring information to the industry as it evolves and develops. And if there are things that we can be talking about, things we can do better, please let us know. You can write me at Matt, that's with 2 T's, at CEM, Charlie Echo Mary, ENG for engineering.ca, Matt at CEMENG.ca. Thank you, everybody. Have a great and safe weekend, and we will talk again soon.
Bye, guys.
Bye.